My name is Aurora Mullen. I'm 29 years old, and until a single night unraveled everything. I believed my wedding was the beginning of a beautiful new life. For a year I had planned every detail with care, the venue, with the cascading lights, the dress tailored 3 times, until it fit like a second skin, the seating chart I revised endlessly to avoid drama and the future I imagined, with a man I trusted more than anyone. Looking back, I realize it was not love that blinded me, but certainty. I was certain Roger loved me, certain we were meant for each other, certain we were stepping into a shared future we both wanted. The rehearsal dinner only reinforced that illusion. The restaurant glowed with warm lighting and polite laughter. Roger's father cracked a joke about grandkids my mother cried twice, and our friends toasted so enthusiastically the stemware rattled. If anyone had paused to look closely, they might have noticed Roger was quieter than usual, more detached, but no one did. Not even me. I brushed it off as nerves as the weight of the following day bearing down on him. Weddings can overwhelm even the calmest people, I reminded myself. When we got home, the air in the apartment felt strangely heavy. Confetti from someone's party popper was still tangled in my hair, and as I took off my earrings, I felt an uncomfortable pressure in my chest I couldn't name. Roger stood by the window with a half-empty glass of red wine. He wasn't a heavy drinker, especially not on nights that mattered, and the sight of him staring blankly at the skyline nagged at me. We did it. One more day, I said softly, expecting him to smile back. He didn't. He barely looked at me. Something was off, and the silence between us didn't feel like exhaustion. It felt like distance. I asked him what was wrong. He said nothing in that flat way that means something is absolutely wrong. I tried again, gentle but concerned. Roger talked to me. You barely said a word in the car. When I placed a hand on his shoulder, he stiffened, as if the touch irritated him. The feeling in my stomach tightened into a cold knot. I asked if someone offended him, if the flowers were wrong, if his mother had said something again. I was fully prepared to soothe whatever anxiety he had. That's what I did in our relationship: fix, reassure, stabilize. But he didn't need stabilizing. What he said next wasn't uncertainty, it was truth. I can't stop thinking about Lily, he muttered, still staring out the window. Lily Rowan. His ex-girlfriend. The one from college. The one he described as chaos wrapped in beauty, reckless and magnetic. The kind of woman who burned everything she touched, including him. He claimed he'd moved on. I had believed him. Hearing her name come from his lips, drenched in longing, felt like the floor falling out from under me. I tried to stay calm. I told him big life changes sometimes make people revisit past memories, that this didn't have to mean anything. But before I could finish, he turned toward me, eyes glassy with alcohol and something harsher. It does mean something, he snapped quietly. She was passion, fire, life, and you. You're safe. The words sliced through me. Safe. A compliment in many contexts, but not here. Here it was a condemnation. I asked him what he meant, and he didn't hesitate. He said I was steady, dependable, structured, the woman a man marries when he's done chasing excitement. He said marrying me was the smart thing to do, not the thing his heart wanted. Every word felt like a deliberate incision, precise and merciless. He talked about Lily with the kind of nostalgia people reserve for things they still desire. He described me as a checklist, someone reliable, predictable, someone a man settled for. I stared at him, unable to speak. This was the man I had built a future with, the man I had trusted with every vulnerable part of myself. And he was standing there telling me, without hesitation, that he had chosen me, not out of love, but out of practicality. For a moment, his face softened as he saw the shock on mine. Don't look at me like that, he muttered. You had to know, deep down. He was wrong. I didn't know. And the realization that he believed I should have expected this, that he thought his lack of passion was obvious, only made the pain sharper. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I didn't demand explanations. I simply walked to the guest room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. The city lights filtered through the blinds, casting faint strips across the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just sat there, letting the truth settle like cold ash in my chest. Hours passed, and the anger I expected never came. Instead, something else took shape, a quiet, crystalline clarity. All the small moments of distance over the past year suddenly made sense. All the times I felt him withdrawing, all the moments where his affection seemed carefully measured. Instead of freely given, none of them were my imagination. They were warnings I didn't want to see. By the time dawn crept into the room, pale and soft, I knew what I needed to do. Not out of spite or punishment, but out of survival. I walked to my closet, and pulled out a suitcase. I wasn't running away. I was stepping out of a life built on someone else's hesitation. And for the first time since the night began, I felt steady. The morning light looked almost unreal as it crept across the floor, softening the edges of the room. It didn't feel like the start of a normal day. It felt like standing at the boundary between two different lives, one I had just stepped out of, and one I had no idea how to enter. I moved quietly through the apartment, careful not to wake Roger. He was still in the bedroom, probably still asleep or half-conscious, surrounded by the remnants of last night's wine and careless truths. I didn't look toward the door. I didn't need to. Everything that had to be said had already been said. Packing was strangely easy. When you realize someone doesn't truly love you, your attachment to objects tied to that person dissolves instantly. I folded simple, comfortable clothes into the suitcase items that felt like mine, not ours. I added my passport, laptop, charger, wallet. The only sentimental thing I took was a picture of me with my parents at a beach from years ago. It felt grounding, like a reminder that before Roger, I existed as a whole person. I left behind everything he'd ever given me. The gifts, the jewelry, the framed photos, the notes he once wrote. They felt counterfeit, now artifacts from a version of our relationship that never truly existed. My suitcase looked almost comically light, but so did the weight on my shoulders. At my desk, I opened the laptop. Our wedding website was still on the screen from the night before. A picture of us smiling radiantly stared back at me. I didn't feel anger, sadness, or nostalgia, just an odd emptiness, a blankness, where emotion should have lived. I minimized the tab, opened a travel site, and booked a flight to Bali, our honeymoon destination, but this time for one person. I chose a quieter villa far from the resort we had reserved, somewhere that didn't bear his fingerprints. Then came the email. I drafted it slowly, choosing each word with intention. Subject: wedding cancellation. Dear friends and family, due to irreconcilable differences discovered last night, the wedding between Roger and myself is officially canceled. I apologize for any inconvenience. There will be no further discussion on this matter. Sincerely, Aurora Mullen. It was dry, factual, almost clinical. And it needed to be. Anything more emotional would invite questions, justifications, pity. I wanted none of it. I CC'd Roger and his parents. It was a single blow, delivered with precision. Nothing vindictive, just final. The clock read 6:14 a.m. when I hit send. A strange stillness settled over me afterward, something calm and absolute, the kind of peace that follows a wound being cauterized, sharp, decisive healing in a way that feels brutal but necessary. I grabbed my suitcase and left the apartment without hesitation. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say. The early commute traffic hummed faintly as my rideshare car drove me to the airport. People walked their dogs, joggers passed on sidewalks. Baristas opened shop doors. Life moved as though nothing extraordinary was happening. Meanwhile, the life I lived yesterday had ended, yet the world around me was entirely unchanged. It was strangely comforting. At the airport, I turned off my phone fully. The moment the screen went black, my lungs filled deeper than they had in months. I didn't realize until that moment how suffocating the last year had been, how much space I'd given to a man who never asked for my heart because he didn't want it. He wanted my stability, my predictability, my certainty. I bought a coffee, found a seat near my gate, and watched the crowds move in their purposeful clusters. Everyone around me had somewhere they needed to be. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't going anywhere because someone expected me to. I was going because I chose to. The flight felt long but not unbearable. I slept inconsistently, drifting in and out of a shallow haze. I watched part of a movie. I listened to a playlist I made years ago before Roger convinced me my music taste was too emotional. Somewhere over the ocean, I realized I no longer cared about his opinions. That in itself was liberating. When the plane finally landed in Bali, the humid air enveloped me like a warm blanket. My villa was small and peaceful, tucked between palm trees, with an open terrace facing the ocean. I unpacked slowly, allowing the quiet of the room to seep into me. For 2 weeks, I lived silently. I woke up early, practiced yoga, walked along the beach, barefoot, tried local food from small roadside carts, read books, and sat on the terrace watching the waves. My thoughts finally stopped racing. My body loosened. My mind uncoiled. No one needed anything from me. No one criticized me. No one asked me to shrink or stretch or adjust. I simply existed. It was the first time in years that I remembered what it felt like to belong entirely to myself. But eventually, even peace demands courage. On the 14th day, while sitting on the terrace with the ocean shimmering beneath the late afternoon sun, I powered my phone back on. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't anxious. I was simply ready to clear the debris of the life I had left behind. When the screen lit up, it vibrated nonstop, a tidal wave of notifications flooding in. Dozens of missed calls, countless messages, emails stacked like casualties in my inbox. The frantic digital aftermath of a wedding that never happened. I took a deep breath, steady and grounded, and opened the first message. The first messages I opened were from Roger. They came in a relentless stream, each one written at a different stage of panic, anger, confusion, or guilt. The earliest texts were sharp and accusatory, sent only a few hours after I had left. Aurora. What's wrong with you? This isn't funny. Call me back. We have a wedding tomorrow. You're being dramatic. Those were followed by several missed calls and voicemails I didn't listen to yet. The next set of messages arrived around noon on the same day. They were a mix of frustration and disbelief. I woke up and you were gone. Seriously. Can you just talk to me? We can work through this. You're overreacting because of one stupid night. Reading them felt like watching someone argue with a version of me that no longer existed. The woman who stayed. The woman who soothed. The woman who would have apologized even though she had done nothing wrong. Then the tone changed. By late afternoon, his messages grew more frantic and scattered. Your email. Why would you send that to everyone? My parents are furious. People are calling nonstop. You need to fix this. Call me. Please. It was strange to see him use the word please, a word he rarely used unless he needed something from me. I kept scrolling. 3 days later, the desperation deepened. Aurora. I'm losing my mind. I didn't mean any of it. I was drunk. You know I didn't mean it. I love you. I don't want Lily. It was just, please call me. Please. The messages blurred together. He apologized, then blamed me, then pleaded, then accused me again. I could practically chart his emotional decline in chronological order. After the texts, I opened the voicemails. His mother's voice filled my headphones in the first one. It was sharp-clipped and dripping with indignation. Aurora, this is Diane. I can't comprehend what you think you're doing. You embarrassed Roger. You embarrassed our entire family. We have thousands of dollars on the line, and vendors are threatening legal action. You need to come home and sort this out. Be an adult. Her tone implied I was a reckless child instead of the woman her son had emotionally gutted. In the next voicemail, she had shifted her tactic from anger to guilt. I know you're overwhelmed, but running away isn't the answer. Roger loves you. Everyone has doubts. You two just need to talk and move forward. Don't destroy your future over one emotional night. It was almost impressive how swiftly she alternated between condescension and manipulation. I listened to several more messages, friends confused or concerned. Relatives asking what happened, people pretending to be worried when they were mostly nosy. It was a digital graveyard of reactions to a wedding that died before it could be born. Finally, I reached Roger's last voicemail. His voice was quieter than before, hoarse and uneven. Aurora, please, just call me. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But don't do this. Don't throw us away. I need you. I can't sleep. I can't think. I'm so sorry. Please talk to me. 3 months ago, that voicemail would have shattered me. I would have replayed it until every word carved itself into my ribcage. Now, after 2 weeks of clarity and silence, it felt like listening to an echo from a life that didn't belong to me anymore. I wasn't untouched by his pain, but it didn't drown me either. It was a distant ache, like pressing a bruise instead of reopening a wound. Still, I knew I had to close the last loose end. I dialed his number. He picked up before the first ring even completed. Aurora. He sounded breathless, panicked, relieved, like he had been waiting by the phone the entire 2 weeks. Yes, I said calmly. There was a small, stunned silence on his end. He wasn't used to my composure. He probably expected tears, anger, or trembling. Instead, my voice was steady, almost unnervingly so. Aurora, please, he began frantically. I'm begging you. Come home. We can talk. We can fix this. I didn't mean what I said. I was drunk. You know how I get. I heard you clearly, I interrupted gently. Being drunk doesn't invent new feelings. It just removes filters. You told me the truth. No, he insisted, voice cracking. I told you something I didn't even understand. It was old feeling, stupid nostalgia. I don't want Lily. I want you. Roger, I replied, you didn't just hurt me. You revealed what you really felt. You looked at me and saw someone safe. Someone you were settling for. I can't unknow that. He inhaled sharply, the sound shaky and desperate. But I love you. You love the version of me who stayed no matter what I said. Not the one talking to you right now. Not the one who knows better. There was a long silence, so long I almost thought he'd hung up. Finally, he whispered, Are you really ending this? I'm choosing myself, I said simply. Goodbye, Roger. He started to speak again, but I ended the call before he could. My hand didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I blocked his number immediately and placed my phone on the terrace table beside me. The ocean stretched ahead, endless and calm. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me, an unmistakable sense of emotional space opening wide and clean. But the quiet didn't last long. A few hours later, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was familiar. I let it go to voicemail. When the notification pinged, I pressed play. It was Roger's father, and unlike his son, he wasn't crying or begging. His voice was steady, controlled, and cold. Aurora, he said, it's time we talked. I listened to Roger's father's voicemail twice, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to understand the tone he chose. It wasn't emotional or frantic like Roger's messages. It wasn't guilt-heavy like Diane's. His voice had the polished calm of a man used to power and authority, a man accustomed to speaking and being obeyed. Aurora, it's time we talked, he had said, as if this entire disaster were merely an inconvenience requiring a firm managerial hand. I knew exactly what the conversation would be, the attempt to pull me back in line to correct me, to remind me of how I was supposed to behave. I waited until the next morning to return the call, not out of hesitation, but because I wanted to speak from a place of absolute clarity, not reaction. When I dialed the number, he answered immediately. Aurora, he said with the tone of someone addressing a wayward employee, rather than the woman his son had just emotionally betrayed. I'm glad you finally decided to stop running. I'm not running, I replied evenly. I'm calling you back because I heard your message. He exhaled sharply, a sound halfway between irritation and relief. Good. Now let's talk about fixing this. Roger made a mistake. A single mistake. People say things under stress. You don't blow up a wedding because of that. It wasn't a single mistake, I said. It was the truth. That's your interpretation, he countered swiftly. But what matters now is moving forward. You and Roger are engaged, financially invested, and committed. We have thousands tied up in vendors. A quick private ceremony can resolve this and avoid further embarrassment. The word embarrassment struck me. It wasn't my happiness he was concerned about. It was his family's image, his reputation, his money. The details only confirmed what I already sensed. This had never been about me as a person. I was an extension of their carefully curated narrative. Mr. Mercer, I said softly, I'm not marrying your son. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice had sharpened. Are you really willing to destroy our family's relationship over one emotional night? Do you have any idea how unreasonable this sounds? It was fascinating in a detached way how both he and Roger used the same language, emotional, unreasonable, dramatic, as if my pain were an overreaction instead of a response to betrayal. Your son told me he was marrying me because I was the safe choice, I said. He told me he wanted someone else. He didn't say it in anger. He said it in relief. People vent, Aurora. You're being rigid. A marriage requires flexibility. A marriage requires love, I corrected, and honesty and intention. Roger has neither of those for me. Be sensible, he snapped, his patience thinning. You two have a stable relationship, a stable future. Don't throw it away because your pride is wounded. His words were meant to manipulate me back into place, but they only made everything clearer. He thought I was predictable. He thought I would fold under pressure. He thought I would return simply because he commanded it. I was done being predictable. Mr. Mercer, I said, calm and steady. The engagement is over. The wedding is canceled. The contract emotionally, personally, and practically has been voided. There is nothing left to discuss. A cold silence followed. For a moment I imagined him sitting behind his polished desk, jaw clenched, realizing he had no control over the outcome. You're making a mistake, he said, finally clipped and tight. No, I replied. I'm correcting one. He inhaled sharply through his nose. Very well. If this is the path you choose, understand that our family will not be accommodating. You're walking away from security, from a good life. I'm walking toward my own, I answered. There was nothing left after that. I ended the call. My fingers didn't tremble. My breath stayed even. The conversation felt less like a confrontation and more like cutting the final string tying me to a life I no longer recognized. I blocked his number, then his wife's, then every family member connected to them. The digital world grew quiet again, and with that quiet came an unexpected sense of relief, clean, deep, final. The next morning, I extended my villa reservation by another month. The staff smiled warmly when I told them. I think they sensed what I was doing, not escaping but healing. The days that followed unfolded gently. I read more. I explored local villages. I learned how to order breakfast in the local language. I swam in the ocean at sunset. Slowly, my life reshaped itself around peace instead of expectation. By the time I left Bali, I no longer felt the hollow ache of heartbreak. I felt something else, self-respect reclaimed and rooted deeper than before. 6 months later, standing in my new loft, surrounded by things I had chosen only for myself, I felt settled in a way I never had with Roger. My plants thrived. My music filled the rooms freely. Every inch of the space felt like me. The past was a closed chapter, or so I thought, because one quiet afternoon, while I was unpacking a box of books, the buzzer rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I pressed the intercom button. Yes, a thin, trembling voice crackled through the speaker. Aurora, it's me. And just like that, the past found its way to my doorstep. I recognized Roger's voice immediately, despite how thin and strained it sounded through the intercom. It didn't shock me, but it did pull me out of the quiet rhythm of my day. I didn't buzz him in automatically. I hesitated not out of indecision, but out of a desire to understand my own reaction. There was no jolt of fear, no pang of longing, no flicker of nostalgia, only a calm, detached curiosity. Eventually, I pressed the button to unlock the main door. I didn't tell him to come up. I knew he would anyway. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on my apartment door. I opened it without ceremony. Roger stood there looking almost unrecognizable. His clothes were plain, wrinkled, and poorly fitted. His eyes were tired, his face thinner, his hair unstyled, as if he'd simply stopped caring. His shoulders slumped a little when he saw me, and he scanned the loft with a mixture of surprise and discomfort. The space was bright open, filled with warm colors and plants. It looked lived and peaceful mine. The way he glanced at it told me he hadn't expected my life to be so full without him. You look different, he said quietly. His expression was conflicted somewhere between admiration and grief. What can I help you with, Roger? I asked. My tone wasn't cruel, only composed. It startled him more than anger would have. He swallowed, eyes flicking down as his voice broke. I've lost everything, he said, almost in a whisper. My friends barely talk to me. My parents blame me for how everything turned out. I had to move back in with them for a while. I feel like I'm drowning every day. He wrapped his arms around himself in a way that reminded me of someone standing in the cold without a jacket. I listened not unkindly, but without absorbing his pain. He continued, tears forming in his eyes. I miss you, Aurora. I miss us. I miss the life we planned. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. I was stupid, drunk, scared. I said things I didn't mean. Please, we can fix this. We can start over. The version of me he expected, the woman who once soothed his insecurities, who would have rushed to comfort him, was gone. He was speaking to someone he didn't know anymore, someone he helped create by breaking me in the first place. I let him finish. Then I answered carefully. There is no us left to fix, I said. There's the woman I was, who loved you fully and trusted you completely. And there's the woman I am now. They are not the same. He stepped forward slightly. But you still love me. I know you do, he insisted. You wouldn't have answered the door if you didn't. I answered the door because I'm not afraid of you, I said. Not because I love you. He stared at me like he couldn't process the words. Desperation flickered across his face. I can be better. I can prove it. Please don't throw me away. Don't let one mistake define everything. You didn't make one mistake, I said. You revealed your truth. And once someone tells you who they are, you're supposed to believe them. His expression hardened suddenly, as if he'd been waiting for an opening to ignite his old defenses. The sadness twisted into frustration. So you're just giving up. After years together, you're going to let your pride ruin something we worked for. No, I replied. I'm preserving the part of my life you didn't destroy. I'm not sacrificing my self-worth to rescue a relationship you already abandoned emotionally. His jaw tightened. You're cold, he snapped. You weren't like this before. You're right, I said. I wasn't. I was willing to accept less than I deserved because I loved you. You mistook that for weakness. It wasn't. Something in him broke at that. He looked around the apartment again, absorbing the details he had ignored earlier. The warm afternoon light, the books stacked neatly, the plant near the window, thriving the vinyl, spinning softly in the background. A life that continued without him, perhaps even improved without him. It was written plainly across his face. He thought I'd collapse without him. He never imagined I'd become stronger. So that's it, he said, finally, voice hollow. I'm just nothing to you now. You're a part of my past, I answered. But you're not my future. He blinked hard as if the words stung physically. I didn't raise my voice or shut the door in anger. I simply stepped back and nodded toward the hallway. You should go, Roger. He stared at me another second, searching for hesitation, warmth, anything to cling to. But all he saw was resolve. Quiet, steady, undeniable. He turned slowly and walked toward the elevator. I didn't follow him to the door. I didn't need to. When the door clicked shut behind him, the sound wasn't violent or dramatic. It was final. I stood in the quiet of my loft as the music played softly. The room felt light, spacious. I walked to the record player, lifted the needle, and restarted the song. Then I returned to my unpacking, placing books onto the shelves in the order I liked, without compromise, without shrinking, without anyone else's preferences guiding me. The sun lowered outside, casting warm, golden shapes across the floor, and I understood with a certainty I had never felt before that peace doesn't always come with a grand revelation. Sometimes it comes with the quiet acceptance that a closed chapter is truly irrevocably closed. Roger was not my peace. He was the storm I survived. And this life, the calm, steady, quietly